Can't hear you, brother.
You can't hear me? What the fuck?
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah, we're
What?
live.
Oh,
We're on.
welcome
Take us
to
in,
the Break
Joe.
Room Podcast.
What's going on, Break Room Maniacs? Welcome to a third episode in our series, WWE Rivals on A&E. Today, we are going to be live streaming our live reaction to arguably the greatest rivalry of all time, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What?
Versus the great one, the jabroni beating, pie eating, eye braising, trailblazing, eyebrow raising, the great one, The Rock.
The great one.
Can you
So this
summon what the break room
Oh.
is cooking?
So to kick us off, we're going to kind of kick it off to Vin. We're going to kick off with the biggest news story to kind of hit professional wrestling airwaves in a very, very long time. The announcement, the tweet, I should say, that Vince McMahon at 77 years old is officially retiring from his active duties as CEO
Sad
of
day.
World Wrestling Entertainment. Vin, what were your overall thoughts as soon as you saw that? And now that you know that it's real, what do you think?
Man, we've been leading towards this. We've talked about this over the past few weeks, all the situation with McMahon and these NDAs and these news reports that keep coming out. But, it looks like he is stepping aside. And at the end of the day, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for fans. It's a big deal for the WWE. He's been the showrunner. He's been the spearhead to everything we've enjoyed over the last 3 decades. He's the mastermind behind the current day wrestling and how big it has grown to be from when he took it over from his dad. The end of an era for sure. It's not great that it happens under, kind of, I don't want to say a cloud, but it's just, there's some controversy going on. His name is in the mix. He's not totally in control of the reports. So I think it is long-term good for the WWE. But it's going to be really interesting how they pick it up. How do you move on? What does the WWE look like without McMahon behind the wheel? Other people making decisions, people who inherited their roles. It's a legacy business, so you don't know. And Vince McMahon dedicated his life to wrestling, and he made it what it is today. So his legacy is cemented, regardless of what happens. It's tough. I think I'm gonna kick it to Chris because I know Chris has real feelings about this, not just observations. I have a lot of observations, but Chris, how do you feel as a fan and a lifelong WWE loyalist?
Yes, a loyalist in the Monday Night Raws. I never really tuned into WCW. Look, man, Vince is one of the funniest motherfuckers in the world. The Attitude Era, all the shit that transpired. We've been rewatching it. My friends, Mike, who's in here, he said Raw is Yao. Yao's been watching the old school stuff, and man, there's definitely an element of like fucking psychopath to be able to do all these stories, and obviously there's a team and a number of people involved, but man, he's provided me with so much enjoyment over my life, and people nowadays, it's very popular to hate Vince because it's very popular to hate everything and everyone. But even nowadays, he still provides us with good memories. It's easy to say, "Oh, wrestling nowadays sucks" when you don't watch it, but I do actually watch it. Usually every Monday, I tune in. I don't always pay attention, and there's a lot of shit in it that I don't like. Mind passing that, hon? There's a lot of shit that I don't like, but there's every now and then, and that's always kind of not always, but that's how wrestling's been for a while. If it's a 3-hour show, maybe at least 40 minutes of it might be entertaining, and that's because they have to put in a little bit for everyone. Focus on the kids, focus on the teens, the young men and women, the older people who are in it for the nostalgia. But I digress. Even nowadays, we've been provided. WrestleMania was great. We all watched it together. Night 1 and night 2 were a fucking ball. It was the best WrestleMania we've had in over a decade. So this man has provided us with a lot of entertainment. Um, I think it sucks to see people who are celebrating it, and maybe good. I think maybe some positive stuff will change in wrestling, but I don't think it really changed all that much too, to a degree. Um, I would love to see them make a storyline where Shane comes back and fights for his part ownership of the company. They have to do that. They've always done that. Turn reality into storyline. So that would be great if they do that at some point. Even though apparently they're on bad terms with Shane right now or something.
Mm.
But yeah, man, it's tough. It's this whole week has sucked. I said goodbye to one of my heroes, my role models. Great man I knew passed away this week, and then like the next day or two, now Vince is retiring, and it's like all of these. Not that Vince is a hero, but I mean,
He was an innovator.
he definitely, So yeah, it's kind of sad to see, especially if they're marred in controversy. I think it's gonna get worse. More NDAs are gonna come to light. I think as
Yeah.
long as it's not, him doing something like super super inappropriate, that would be horrible to hear. I hope nothing like that happened. But if it's, it's tough to comment on because we don't know shit. You know, we don't know shit about this whole situation with the women, but more and more is coming out, and I'm afraid that it's gonna get worse, and that's why he retired. So this might not be the end of it. This might, just be. There's gonna
I
be
think this is the calm before the storm, like when Chris Benoit first passed, and then
yeah, not even necessarily. I mean, yes, that would be an. I don't think it'll be that extreme, but I think that the stories may get worse before things get better, and yeah, it's fucked. Guess
It's like the end
nobody's
of
pure.
it's the end of like a childhood thing. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of attachment. There's a lot of memories and things that get mixed in when you're talking about this and McMahon. So
He'll
I can
return
see.
someday too. He'll show up on TV. He'll do his march out. Everybody's gonna cheer.
Rob, how about
oh,
you as somebody who
Sorry, Joe. Say that one more time, bud.
He cut out. I don't know if Joe hears this or something. If he doesn't hear us,
Rob,
because,
Rob,
how
what
do you
are-
feel about
what are
how do
your
you feel about
thoughts on
Vince, dude?
I mean, it's shocking news for sure. It's one of those things that you never thought would happen. Vince McMahon retiring. Vince McMahon is wrestling, and wrestling is Vince McMahon.
Yeah,
They're synonymous, and it's wild to think that we live in a day and age where Vince McMahon is not at the helm of the WWF or WWE or WWF, because really, a Vince McMahon has been running wrestling for as long as wrestling has mattered,
right.
in
Vince.
America, and it's amazing to see the end of an era. I mean, is it shocking? No. I mean, we all lived through the Attitude Era, and we all saw Vince McMahon blatantly sexualizing
The
women
genetic
on television.
jackhammer.
It was the greatest thing ever.
There's
The
enough
whole train,
clips.
all that shit. But it could be a bittersweet thing. I do think that a change of guard is necessary for the product to really succeed. I think that a lot of
To evolve.
the story making decisions that they've made in the last 10 years plus are really questionable at best. Now, is it to say it's because it's not raunchy like in the 90s anymore? I mean, they can write good shit that's not raunchy. I mean, look at the 80s. The 80s was the golden age of wrestling, and they didn't need raunch or any of that, hullabaloo to make their program success. So I think that with maybe someone like Triple H having
Cody Rhodes.
more of a say, Cody Rhodes, exactly, because I mean Dusty was essential to the business when he was in
booker
his
for
heyday. I mean, he
WCW.
got so many people into wrestling, and Cody's going to follow in his footsteps, I think, and he's going to be really an essential key player to the success of the WWE. But I mean, I always enjoyed wrestling, back in the day. The Attitude Era was, I grew up with that too. I used to play the games, and it used to confuse the shit out of me because I never realized that WCW wasn't WWF. Like, I thought it was just like another show, like, there was SmackDown and Raw. I thought WCW was just another show, and especially how many people used to hop between the the programs. I mean, you had Hulk Hogan on WWF, and then all of a sudden he's on WCW. It was like, well, is it the same thing or is it not? You know, as a kid, I didn't understand the business behind it, but I mean, you got to hand it to Vince for the legacy that he had, because nobody in the history of the world has ever put wrestling on the map like Vince McMahon did, and no one ever will touch the legacy that Vince McMahon has. You know what I mean? And
it's crazy to watch videos.
his loss will definitely be felt, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. We'll definitely feel the loss of Vince McMahon in the years to come.
It's crazy, like, you know, you said he's synonymous with wrestling, and I watch, you know, I've been in this whole thing watching older videos, and to see McMahon be the announcer, you know, for me, that I wasn't used to that. I grew up with JR and King,
Jesse
so
Ventura.
that's you know, that's how it's crazy. That's how much I feel like that's how much control he wanted over the product, was that, like, he was willing to continue, because that's how he started when his dad was running things, right? He would be, because his dad didn't want him to wrestle. That's the story, right? So he was an announcer for the regional shows. But yeah, he seems like a control freak in a way, where he really wants things to be executed and done in such a way, and to the degree where he would even continue to be the announcer even though he's the CEO of the fucking company. I think it just shows how dedicated he was to making sure that the his commentary is awesome.
Commentary. And that's the thing, is he was the voice of his own show, and then over time he ceded that responsibility to a number of different combinations. I mean, they tried to put Macho Man on commentary, and Macho Man didn't want to do it. Yeah, that's why he ended up jumping ship to WCW, is he didn't want to do the commentary. But they had him on there, you know, and eventually they found JR and King. Vince has made so many freaking stars. But, Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I apologize if my internet is cutting out. You guys are kind of in and out with the microphone, so I don't know if my internet is kind of going to pick this up, but I'll do my best to kind of chime in. I sound good? Okay, perfect. So for me, Vince McMahon purchased the World Wrestling Federation from his senior, and that's the years, that's my entire lifetime, that Vince McMahon was the king of professional wrestling. Now, we don't know a lot about the speculation and all these allegations and things like that. All I do know is that, for me, Vince McMahon should be remembered in the same vein as George Lucas. He should be remembered in the same vein as someone like Steve Jobs, someone like Stan Lee. You know, he created an entire world. If you watch pro wrestling, I don't care what promotion you watch, Japan, Mexico, AEW, you're watching it because of Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon ultimately took a regional promotion that was in smoky bars and you know, in cloudy, you know, gymnasiums, and he made it a global brand. He took it worldwide when he started to bring in all these top stars from all these promotions, and he made an all-star team of professional wrestlers in the 1980s, led by Hulk Hogan, who I know Hulk is definitely feeling the brunt of that, because there is no WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan, and there is no WrestleMania without Vince McMahon. So for me, Vince definitely should be remembered in that vein of, you know, George Lucas, Walt Disney, Stan Lee. He created an entire universe for us to enjoy. We're all wearing T-shirts, wrestling T-shirts. You buy a wrestling figure. You're not buying all this stuff. You're not doing all this stuff without Vince McMahon. It was ultimately his vision to make this a brand. Like, he is the guy. He will go down in infamy regardless of how many allegations come out. And at the end of the day, none of it is surprising. We all know the type of guy Vince is. And listen, you're a billionaire with grapefruits, and you're not fine.
Grapefruits.
So I love Vince. I've been a lifelong wrestling fan for as long as I can remember, since I was in diapers. So for me, Vince McMahon will live on forever. Vince McMahon will always be the face and voice of my childhood. And without Vince, we have nothing. We probably don't even have this podcast, because a lot of us probably wouldn't have gotten into a lot of the things that we did later on in our lives. Because at the end of the day, in the 80s, just like Rob said, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, they were our superheroes. They were our life-like superheroes that you can kind of watch on the screen. Uh, kind of want to
Let
segue
us say
us
everything that he
into,
needed to say.
the topic of tonight. It's going to be a great show. It's the third episode in A&E's documentary series, and we did get to watch the Brett versus Sean. Sorry, did I break out?
Yeah, a little bit at the
You're
end.
good. No,
It's
you're
touch
all
and
right.
go. You got all your points out, and then it started, but we
yeah.
get you again.
Did I lose you guys?
We
Am I
got
back?
most
No,
of
you're
you.
good.
We got
I
most
don't know
of
if
you.
it's.
Well,
It
no,
figures
but
Joe's
said.
hosting, but we're gonna take. Oh yeah, no, that was well said. That was well said.
Well said. I mean, and one other point too, just kind of in addition to what Joe was saying, is that as you were saying all that, it connected to me too. He also was able to survive so many versions of media. I mean, you think about like what the world was like in the 80s. You know, it was so much more pure and like I don't know. But then the 90s, there was this rebellious fuck you, Limp Bizkit, Kid Rock,
Eminem.
Korn, like just like it was a weird. The 90s were a weird
Fuck
time.
the system.
Fuck system.
Rage
fuck
Against the
authority,
Machine.
exactly, like South Park.
You fucking don't fucking you fucking fuck you.
Yeah, it was like how
the
bad
Jerry
can
Springer
you be?
show.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Maury, like it was that the 90s was a weird fucking time where like all kinds of shit was going down, and they went from like this puritanical 80s good guy thing to the nasty 90s, which was great in its own way. But then they went into the internet era, and not only Vince pretty much created pay-per-views and a model for wrestling that way, but now defined the newer model for consuming wrestling media, which is whether it's the WWE Network, now it's Peacock. Now when it gets into streaming, like WWE was able to survive all of these different changes in the world, where a lot of TV shows or I don't know, a lot of stuff doesn't hold up, and they've been able to survive, which says something. So,
they evolved the production value between the cameras they use, the lighting, the pyro. Like they put everything of their own into those production values. Like you cannot even remotely touch WWE on production value. Not UFC,
Right.
not NFL, not AEW. There is nothing like the production value of a live WWE show, especially a big event like WrestleMania. There's nothing that looks even remotely close to that. The amount of lighting and the crystal clear, and now you're able to use 3D, and you're able to do
Right.
HD and 4K and things like that.
They're doing the
So
AR
Vince
shit
McMahon
too.
is an innovator. Yeah, the AR
And it looked
augmented
like shit
reality
at
stuff.
first, but it's gotten
cool.
a lot better.
It's all right, but
I want to add one other point
Vince
too.
McMahon is an innovator.
Before moving from Vince, the other thing I wanted to say about him is a lot of people want to hate on him, but he's never asked anything of his guys, his talent, that he himself was not willing to do. That man took his face was put into probably a few asses. He was definitely shoved up Rikishi's ass. He's probably taken a Bronco Buster from Mae Young. Like he's gotten his ass kicked, power bomb, taken all the specials.
Stunned,
elbowed. He's never asked anything of his talent that he himself was not willing. Even when they were doing the fucking trying to get Undertaker to do the Spinneroonie, even then he came out and did the Spinneroonie and fucking self. And yeah, I wanted to add that because that's something that's lost on a lot of people too. He never asked anything that he himself wasn't going to do. But speaking of live events and the quality of those, Vin, you're going to a live event, right?
So yeah. First ever wrestling event. We're going to Monday Night Raw at Madison Square Garden. It's gonna be me, Mike, friend of the pod, Yao. We're gonna be. I don't know what to expect. I gotta be honest. I'm going in just open heart, open eyes. Gonna hopefully see some special shit because we didn't know, but this is coming off the retirement of Vince. We don't know if there's going to be more acknowledgement of that. It seemed like on SmackDown on Thursday, shitload of controversy right off the bat. Brock Lesnar's fucking walking out. Then he's back in the ring, and there's reports that there was some behind-the-scenes negotiation and conversation, as always. So I'm wondering, amongst the controversy, amongst the bullshit, do they have a send-off? Do they have some big names come in It is SummerSlam weekend. This is, we're in the peak of the summer. It's a big season for them. So hopefully we see some cool shit. No idea. Can't wait, though. It's going to be just an experience. That's what I'm looking forward to. Just a unique, one-of-a-kind experience. It's not like going, like Joe was
So
saying.
I don't want to set like the wrong expectations.
No, go ahead.
Well, I said I don't want to set like false hope for you, but I almost anticipate that they'll have a Vince tribute video. I almost anticipate that you might get a star from the past to come back. Madison Square Garden is the house that Vince McMahon built.
Yes.
Okay. So the WWE in the 70s was led by Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah. Shit.
87. No, am I cutting out?
Yeah,
Bud.
You cut out halfway through Bruno Sammartino.
All right. Yeah.
Sorry, buddy.
So Bruno Sammartino sold out 87 consecutive house shows at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
It's an all-time record. He is in the Hall of Fame at the Hall in Madison Square Garden. Moving into the 1980s, Hulk Hogan kept that tradition.
That's incredible. I didn't know that stuff. I didn't know. Poor Joe.
And then moving into the 1990s, Stone Cold at every event that he had in the 1990s. And I think that's a great segue into tonight's show.
Sorry, bud. We love you.
Joe, you may be better if you take the video. Oh, shit.
Joe's making great points. Yeah, that's true. You could turn his video off and maybe just go audio only.
I had to pivot.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I didn't know all that. And yeah, like I some people have brought it up to me that they don't want to, heighten the expectation, but
right now.
No.
Oh,
hey, this is all part of it. Hey, credit to Vince McMahon. It's we're trying to run a live show and we could barely do anything right. So, yeah, I'm really excited for it. We spent a bunch of money to sit in some pretty good seats. So I'm hoping that we get to see some shit. Now,
much fucking better. Jesus Christ.
We had discussed going to Raw as a podcast earlier in the year, right before WrestleMania. It came up that it was going to be at MSG. And then Cody Rhodes got hurt, and it kind of put the kibosh, like, oh, what's the reason to go to Raw if there's no Cody and they don't have their headliner? So, it was kind of like we weren't sure. But our friend Mike, because we've been talking about wrestling ad nauseum, I think we were getting some of our friends into it again, and they're going back into the libraries. They're going into YouTube. They're watching the documentaries, watching old episodes of Raw. So Mike was just like relentless about having me come. Yeah. So I was like, "Fuck it, you only live once. Let's make it happen."
DMs on Instagram, and he's asking me to go. Did you guys already order tickets? Do you guys have tickets? Do you guys have seats? Where are you sitting? What section are you sitting in?
Mike, dude, if you're out there, hit me with the seats. Yeah, he didn't send me all the details. He's holding on to it.
My connection's way more stable now. I was on the wrong fucking Wi-Fi. Goddamn it!
Oh,
yeah.
Hey, take us back. What were you saying? What were you saying before you said so? Vince McMahon built MSG.
Yeah, so Madison Square Garden is the house that Vince McMahon built. Before Vince McMahon started doing WWF shows, and before Vince McMahon's dad, Vince Sr. started doing WWF shows. Madison Square Garden was really known for boxing matches and the circus. So Vince McMahon and his dad took Madison Square Garden and they made it like the mecca of sports in general. And what I was kind of alluding to is Bruno Sammartino sold out 87 consecutive shows at Madison Square Garden, which till this day is a record. And Bruno Sammartino, as well as Vince McMahon, are in the Madison Square Garden Hall of Fame. And then moving into the 1980s, Hulk Hogan did the same thing. Every show that Hulk Hogan headlined was a sellout. And then moving into the 1990s, every single show that Stone Cold Steve Austin headlined was a sellout. That's a great segue into tonight's topic. A&E Rivals, Episode 3, arguably, in my opinion, the greatest rivalry in the history of professional wrestling. And the only reason I say that is because it's not as real as Shawn and Brett, because there was actual real-life heat between the two. Yeah. But The Rock and Austin are two guys who wanted it. They
Yes.
wanted to be the guy. They wanted to be the top guy, and they were competitive. They were extremely competitive. So when you have two guys at their peak, at their prime, being as competitive as you can, nothing bad can happen. They were constantly one-upping each other over and over and over and over again. Until this day, Rock versus Austin are the only wrestlers in history of WrestleMania to headline 3 WrestleManias. WrestleMania 15, WrestleMania 17, and WrestleMania 19, which was Stone Cold's technically retirement match in 2003. So I'm interested to see what your thoughts are. I'm not going to get a chance to kind of watch a live stream of the A&E documentary, but I know Vin is super stoked for this. As soon as the schedule came out, and we knew that tonight's episode would be on Rock vs. Stone Cold, I knew that Vince, Chris, and Rob were going to be all over that, and they're going to love to see like the journey that it took. So before I kind of kick it off to you guys, I kind of want to segue. Oh, you watched it?
Well, I've been not the A&E thing, but I've been rewatching, the shit from the 90s and 2000s and 2000. I'm in 2002 now, so I've been watching it all in real time, binge watching it, and it's such a great rivalry.
So we talked about like legacies of Madison Square Garden. I want to kind of segue into what it means to be a rival. There was only one guy who was the guy in each decade in professional wrestling. You might have had your other guys, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, but there was one guy in the 70s who was the guy, and that was Bruno. In the 1980s, you had a lot of amazing wrestlers, but if there was one guy who was selling more merchandise, was a cartoon character, had his own cartoon, was selling out every building he went into, no one put more asses in seats in the 1980s than Hulk Hogan. So a rival of Hulk Hogan in the 1980s was maybe like the underboss. Right, we all love fucking mob movies, and we all love The Sopranos. So the underboss for Hulk Hogan in the 1980s that was pushing him was, the Macho Man Randy Savage. And then later on in the 90s, it became the Ultimate Warrior. So the Ultimate Warrior became that guy that was trying to take Hulk Hogan's spot. He didn't get it done, but still, you segue into 1992, and you have Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart was the guy in professional wrestling. He was the main event. He was the headliner. He was the top star in the World Wrestling Federation. And the guy that pushed Bret later in the 1990s is Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels came out, and he was edgier. He had a different take. He had an attitude about him. And then that segues into the late 1990s, where now the underboss for Shawn Michaels was Stone Cold Steve Austin. What?
Son of a bitch.
And now Stone Cold became the top guy in the late 1990s. And the guy that came aboard that was pushing him was not Triple H, not Mankind, not The Undertaker, not Kane, not Rikishi, not Kurt Angle, not Chris Jericho. It was The Rock.
And
so these two guys were battling it out for almost a decade to be the top guy in the world of professional wrestling. So, Sweet, I want to kick it to you. What's your thoughts on that rivalry? What are your best memories of that rivalry? And how do you feel that will go down ultimately in the history books?
I won't answer it in that order, but when I think of best memories, it's not necessarily the best, but just something I saw kind of recently that was funny as fuck. Was Stone Cold was, actually, that might have actually been Kurt Angle, not The Rock. Man, there's so many things that all blends together. I remember when he didn't he throw Rock over the bridge? He kidnapped The Rock and he threw him over the bridge.
No, he threw the Intercontinental title over the bridge in the water, not The Rock.
Okay. I could have sworn he threw or Stone Cold got thrown. Somebody got thrown over that bridge.
I remember the limo.
Stone Cold got thrown in the water.
Oh, okay. Yeah, was that
Stone
by Kurt?
Stone Cold got hit by the car.
No, that was by The Rock.
What was interesting between Austin and Rock was that there were times where most of the time Stone Cold was the good guy and The Rock was the asshole who was working for Vince or whoever it may be. Then
the corporate champ.
Yeah. Then I don't remember the second time if it was necessarily a good guy, bad guy dynamic. I think it was that was the second time that they faced off was when Stone Cold turned bad.
Correct.
He turned and sided with Vince,
But
and then,
that was only at the end of the match. At the beginning of the match, he was still face.
that was
He didn't turn it.
WrestleMania 17.
17, yeah.
Arguably
the greatest
match of all time was Stone Cold versus The Rock, WrestleMania 17. I forget where it was, but I remember
Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas. The build-up video, it was like it was a Limp Bizkit song, and I mean, say what you want about Limp Bizkit nowadays, but at the time it was look it up, Austin Rock Limp Bizkit like trailer video. One of the coolest fucking build-ups for a pay-per-view.
My way.
Yeah,
It's
my way. Yeah.
My way on the highway.
WWF used to have like the best promo videos leading up to events. And yeah, it ended up being Stone Cold turned bad. And then the third time they faced off was actually Stone Cold's retirement match. So it's crazy.
That's when he gave up the title to him, right?
He dropped the title to him. He was in the hospital. I think the day
No,
before.
that was a non-title match.
Oh, right.
That was a non-title match.
Shit.
What are you talking about?
A lot blurs together. All right, so hold on, because I just watched the Stone Cold documentary.
Yeah, WrestleMania 19 was not for a title. It was just
Really?
the third installment in the anthology. WrestleMania 19, the title match was Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle.
Huh.
That was the main event.
I
They
mean,
didn't
at
main
that
event.
point, they didn't need the
WrestleMania
belt
19.
anymore. They
They didn't
transcended.
need the belt. They were the two biggest stars in the history of the business. And this was the first time at Mania or at a big show that The Rock would actually get a win over Stone Cold, because he never beat Stone Cold.
Right.
And he never beat Stone Cold at WrestleMania. So titles aside, this was a big moment for The Rock. And you'll see in a documentary, they'll definitely show right after the pinfall, The Rock pushes the referee out of the way, and he sits right next to Stone Cold, and he talks to him, and he basically tells him, thank you for everything that you've done for me, and I love you.
I love you.
And Stone Cold's laying there, and he says the same
Goddamn, I
thing
love
back.
you, kid.
I love
Love you, what?
What? It
two
doesn't matter
things-
who you love.
I was
Two
always on
things.
Austin's side.
I remember The Rock coming out of the Nation of Domination and just Rocky
Yeah.
sucks, dude. It was like he was so good at getting you to hate him.
Yeah.
I didn't know, I wasn't aware of the Maivia thing, so it didn't register. So let's say if I ever saw him, it didn't register that this is the same person or whatever.
Yeah.
But Nation of Domination, and he came out like such a prick. He was giving it to the audience, and he was so fucking good at getting everyone to hate him. Him and Austin just have that different dynamic with the audience. Like, the audience lives vicariously through Austin because Austin is giving the finger and telling it to everybody like how they want to tell it. Whereas The Rock had to be hated to then earn the respect and then be loved. I think like that is what happened with The Rock's journey.
The Rock's arc was definitely different, for sure.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You say his arc, and when you were saying the whole thing about, oh, it wasn't Triple H, it wasn't this, it wasn't that, it made me think of how Stone Cold's ascension is directly tied to
Vince.
the Shawn Michaels, Triple H, we were talking about, what was it, Kevin Nash, and that breaking the kayfabe in front of the audience before, was that right before someone was leaving? Was that the NWO?
That was in Madison Square Garden.
Oh,
so it was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, who at the time were performing in the WWF as Diesel and Razor Ramon, and it was their last night. Shawn Michaels was wrestling Diesel in a cage match.
Yeah.
And after the match was over, Razor Ramon came in, who was a good guy, and Triple H came in the ring, who was a bad guy, and they all hugged, and they all went on the top turnbuckles, and they gave the too sweet sign to the crowd. And that was the first time that they ever broke kayfabe on live air, which means that they admitted that, hey, they're not really heels and faces. These guys don't really hate each other. They're friends, and they're the clique. So that was the first time that we got to see, they call it the curtain call. You got to see like stuff that was behind the curtain.
So, yeah, and before the age of the internet and all that. So, yeah, it was a really big deal. So that led to Vince McMahon picking up the phone and calling up Stone Cold Steve Austin down there in Texas and saying, you're going to win the King of the Ring. And that was his moment. You know, everything from then on, Austin earned, I think, not against, you know, it's
so the real story behind that, Vin, real quick, is because Triple H was a part of that curtain call at Madison Square Garden and he broke kayfabe,
Yeah.
in 1996, Triple H was actually slated to win the King of the Ring.
Yes.
But they pulled that back from him, and he went through like a lot of shit. He was in the doghouse for a solid fucking year before they did anything remotely good with him again. They would put him in slop drop matches where he would wrestle Henry Godwin, and he would get a whole bucket of slop thrown on his head. They threw him in a pig pen, and they got shit all over him. So they really like took him into the outhouse. So he took a lot of shit for kind of doing that. And at the time, he wasn't really a big star. He was kind of like just getting his feet wet.
Hunter Hearst
so
Helmsley.
He was
Hunter Hearst Helmsley, yeah. So that allowed Stone Cold to slide in place, and he became the winner of the 1996 King of the Ring.
Triple H says they were interviewing him, and he said, I'm happy it happened the way it happened because we got to witness possibly the greatest wrestler ever, because no one had ever seen the crowd the way it would be when the glass broke. No one before, no one since. The pop is just out of fucking control. So even Triple H was humble enough to say, I'm glad it went down the way it happened, even though I'm the one that got it in the chin, because we got to watch Austin rise. One thing real quick, Mike said, section 119, row 15. So with your knowledge of the Garden, I don't know if that's decent or not.
I was trying to tell them because they ended up fucking spending like $250 on a ticket and taking an adjustable rate more.
Well, you gotta tell everybody what I spent on a ticket.
You can get nosebleed seats at Madison Square Garden, and they're still good.
115 is basically mezzanine, so that's a level off the floor. So you're not quite on the floor; you're one level off the floor. Those are great seats.
Yeah, it's good.
I don't know if you're in the corner or if you're, parallel to the entranceway where the ramp is. But the 100s are very good seats, so I'm excited for you, man.
Should be cool. I'm gonna get as much footage as I can.
Seats there, dude. All the seats at MSG, like I had nosebleeds, and they were great seats. So
I'm gonna try to do my first kind of first-person-esque documentary of the thing and see how that works.
I'm really excited.
Well, couple of things, couple points. Hold on.
Let's kick it to Rob. Rob has been mute and quiet this whole time. Robbie, baby, talk us through Stone Cold The Rock. What are your memories of that, as it was going on in the late 1990s? And were you a fan then? I know you loved Hogan and Macho in the 80s, but what was Big Robbie doing in the late 90s during the Attitude Era?
I mean, it was tough for me because I fucking loved both of them. And it's like, I wanted, I didn't know who to root for. And they always put on a hell of a show every time I would watch them. And I remember, I even got The Rock's book, The Rock Says.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had his book. I read it when I was a kid, I was, into it, I fucking loved The Rock as a kid. We could use some, fucking doing the eyebrow and shit. It was great. That was, the fucking time to be a wrestling fan, I didn't give a fuck what people thought. But it was just, when that glass broke, you knew, asses were getting kicked, and it was just fucking amazing, and I fucking always loved that. And not for nothing, the guy still fucking got it because he just did WrestleMania again and fucking was the best match in WrestleMania for the last 10 years. Only Stone Cold can fucking do that,
The Rock still got it too.
The Rock still got it, and now
of course, yeah. No, The Rock is fucking killing it.
He's got the fucking life, bro.
He's fucking
crazy.
ripped out of his mind. He fucking has that tequila company, Terramana, now. He's got fucking Black Adam and some Super Pets movie, so he's making fucking DC money.
Yeah.
Phil is sick of The Rock. Our friend Phil, friend of the podcast, he just can't stay. The Rock is such a good spokesman for himself and all his brands, but it's almost to the point where you're like, what the fuck, dude? But
so
anyway,
Stone Cold,
everything starring The Rock.
Stone Cold at 57 years old, and you can talk about other wrestlers, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar. Fuck that. Stone Cold sold out 2 nights in a row, Saturday, Sunday, over 75,000 people filled up the freaking Cowboy Stadium on Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
So over 150,000 people paid a ticket to go see Stone Cold at 57 years old. That's how important he is. That's how impactful he is. And the last thing I wanted to talk about real quick before I kick it back to Sweet, because I know he wanted to touch base on something. For me, The Rock and Stone Cold were synonymous at making professional wrestling cool. No longer
good
was
point.
it,
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
no longer was it, oh, you like wrestling?
The
Hulk
fat
Hogan,
shaming,
like
the fat shaming of
yeah,
wrestling.
yeah, the fat shaming. You know, it wasn't under the table. You had a group of friends that maybe liked it, but
No.
now
The
everyone
fucking
was
shirts
coming
were
to school.
out, bro.
Everyone's wearing a 316. Everyone's wearing
Even
a Just Bring It shirt to
nowadays.
school.
Even
I
nowadays,
Rock
people
to
are
the
like,
gym,
"Oh,
I love it.
I watched it when Stone Cold and The Rock were around, but I don't want
Yeah,
to."
yeah.
Like, they'll admit that
To
much,
stay
but then they're
cool,
like,
yeah,
"Oh,
to stay
yeah,
cool."
but I stopped watching after them." You know, there's
It's true.
always that
Joe's
fat shame.
absolutely right. They mainstreamed it in a way that no one had ever done before.
Yeah.
Or since. But
Or
Sweet, you had something else you wanted to talk about before our next topic?
Multiple points, so I'll kind of rattle them off. I looked it up, and yeah, no, Rock had the Smoke and Skull belt, and he threw that over the bridge, and then Stone Cold showed up,
yeah.
and he threw Stone Cold over the bridge.
Correct.
And then it was
Correct.
like, did he die? Like, what happened? Oh my God,
Correct.
JR. That was
Just cut the black.
I remember watching that as a kid,
Great.
and just being like, holy
No, but
shit.
before that, the synonymous with that is that the actual lake that he threw Stone Cold in was the same lake a year prior that Stone Cold threw the Intercontinental title in. So The Rock and Austin, they feuded in the Intercontinental scene, and then they feuded in the world title scene, you know, building up, you know, each year. So it was a little callback to him throwing the Intercontinental title in there. You want this piece of trash? Here, you can go take this piece of trash.
And then eventually, a year or two after that, Stone Cold took Kurt Angle's gold medals, and I don't know if it was the same bridge, but he threw them over the bridge. And then
Same
Kurt
fucking
Angle
bridge.
kidnapped Austin. That was the memory that popped into my head.
Same
Was
bridge.
Stone Cold was in the back of his truck, and he was like, "I'm the king of the world," and then Kurt Angle.
Not for nothing.
came from
Even
behind.
outside the ring, Stone Cold had the fucking best fucking scenarios. I mean, he beat the shit out of Vince McMahon in the hospital.
Yep.
He beat the shit out of Booker T in the supermarket.
Oh,
I mean, when you fucking saw
God.
him outside the ring,
Price
he was
check,
always doing
sucker.
some ridiculous shit. He drove a Zamboni to the fucking ring. He drove
Stone Cold-
multiple ATVs, trucks, fucking everything.
Beer baths.
Motorcycles.
He didn't need a ring. You know what I mean? Like, that's to that point. He didn't need a ring.
He was ready at all
Always.
times. He could wake up and choose violence. Like, it was fucking Stone Cold, you know? I fucking loved him. And that's why it was, like, always hard for me to choose, like, do I want to root for The Rock or Stone Cold? Because I want them both to win. Like, it's hard. And that's the mark of two great fucking athletes, to, like, want them both to win, you know?
One of my favorite episodes of Raw, and Sweet, you'll probably remember this. It was Stone Cold was like missing, and they didn't know where he was. And The Rock was in the ring, and he was cutting a promo, and he was running Austin down, and he's like, "Austin, you can take your ball and go home. You can check in, candy ass into the SmackDown hotel." And this is like late '90s, so The Rock had a beeper on his belt, and The Rock picks up his beeper, looks at his beeper, and it says 316.
Oh yeah.
And then they go backstage, and Stone Cold
Got
is
like
driving a monster truck,
over
and
his
he runs
car.
over The Rock's Lincoln Continental with a monster truck.
Yeah.
And The Rock's like facial expressions are fucking timeless. Like his
He's probably
how he fucking sold it with his eyes is priceless.
Yeah.
So
Oh, his eyes.
Fucking-
Always had that
Also,
shocking-
and while we're talking about all the Austin moments too, when he filled Vince McMahon's convertible
Cement.
up with the
Uh-huh.
cement. Yeah.
Cement.
That was
There's
the
a lot of
best.
good. I wanted to acknowledge just some of the comments, right? So
Yeah,
Exacted
absolutely.
TV's here, and you should
Hey!
my
definitely
cousin.
fan of the
What's up,
show,
Matty?
friend of the show for quite some time. Check out Exacted TV's Instagram. He's got it's XAQTED TV. He does like 3D printing. He's got some cool shit.
Sick.
We gotta
My
ask
cousin
him
built
to.
a life-size R2D2 unit. He's probably the smartest person I know in terms of hands-on like building technology. As good as Vin is at building like PCs, my cousin can build fucking anything from the ground up. He just
That's
built one of Thor's hammers. He built like
I saw
he
he
takes
had
R2D2
the axe.
units to Comic-Con and shit like that. So hopefully one day we can all get
That's
together
your
and we
cousin?
can go to a con together. It's my cousin. Yep.
Oh yeah, dude. No, he makes some cool shit. Like he's got like masks and stuff. We got to get him to like make us into stormtroopers or something.
But yeah,
That'll cost twice as much.
From the Dungeon Podcast is also here. What's going on, brother?
Hey,
Oh,
what's up,
you
dude?
Friend of
rock.
the show, Mike P here as well. Apparently, Sean just turned 57 a few days ago.
Yeah, he did.
Birthday, Shawn
and
Michaels.
The Rock for president, dude. I would vote for The Rock for president. He'd be a
That's his
unifier.
trajectory. As fucking weird as
Vince
it is,
McMahon's
that's
gonna
his
be his running
trajectory.
mate.
Oh,
What
shit.
do you do?
Have
When
any
you've
of
done
you
everything.
watched that show, Young Rock? Because that's
Yes.
like the whole plot of the show is The Rock is
running
running
for
for president in like 2040 or whatever the fuck. That's a
You
great
think that
fucking
Vince
show.
McMahon's going to be his vice president?
I gotta
Rob,
see
you need to
it.
watch. You need to watch Young
Rock.
Rock. Rob, you need to really. It's 20-minute
I
episodes.
know. I
Take a
even
shit,
met
watch
the guy that
episodes.
plays the Sheik like twice already.
Chicky baby.
Chicky
Don't
baby.
10 men, I wanna let you know. Jabroni beating.
Oh,
Pull Hulk Hogan, son of a bitch.
The Iron Sheik on Twitter is the funniest
fuck
fucking
you
thing
in the
in the
ass,
world.
Hulk Hogan.
Follow the Iron Sheik on.
He's never dropped the kayfabe anything. No, fuck Hulk Hogan every single day.
But even like when he,
I
like,
put you in the camel clutch. I make you humble.
Make you humble.
he'll even comment
So-
on like modern day like political shit, but he'll say it in the Sheik form. It'll just be like
Shit, you.
"fuck school shooter" or something like that. He's so funny.
All right. So I'm the newcomer. Everybody knows everything already, but so I keep discovering new things. So with the Sheik, I was watching the treasure. So they're obtaining Sergeant Slaughter's boot. They're looking for the Sheik's
You love
boot.
it, right? You love.
It's
you know,
great.
love this
Yeah,
fucking-
Joe
you love it.
recommended it. He's like, you got to
Treasure
watch
Hunters
it.
is a great show. Yeah.
So, what the hell was it? So they're telling the Iron Sheik story and like where he really came from. So he was the fucking bodyguard for the Shah of Iran, bro. No, that's like a
Fucking Shah
political
of
thing.
Iran.
That's fucked up because
No
of, you know,
fucking joke.
I
He's
can't
no
believe.
joke.
Yeah, he's no joke. Yeah, and he seemed, from what they were talking about with him, and Sarge was talking about him very.
Prick said I look like the Shah of Iran. Rob was thinking it. That's a Sopranos
great
reference. for
Sopranos
those who don't
callback.
know.
Prick said I look like the
I
Shah
had
of
to say it.
Iran.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to say
Said
it.
that is he really fucking does look
Come on.
like the Shah of Iran.
It's not
He does.
interrupting if it's a Sopranos quote.
Oh my god.
But no, it's very interesting to learn his origin and his dynamic with Sarge and how much they really loved each other and collaborated on that whole thing. And then it informs me to why you would do the Iraqi sympathize, like why Sarge would, because he trusted him. You know what I mean? He trusted his partner. He was like behind the scenes. They're partners. They're coming up with this whole dynamic. So really cool to see Sheik's story.
If I
And he
really,
looked so cool. He looked like such a cool guy, and he came out for one of the Hall of Fame speeches, and he was on the whole time, and everybody was loving
Hall
it.
of Fame speech is top 3 all time in my book.
CJ had to drive him once to an event.
Really,
God.
that's great. Oh, we
There's
gotta
a
get
great
CJ to tell us that
documentary.
story on the show, dude.
Oh yeah,
Oh, that'd be
definitely.
amazing. There's a documentary of the Iron Sheik. I believe it's on Amazon Prime. It's
Okay.
phenomenal. It might even be on Netflix too. I'm not sure, but that's another one you can add to the list. at
Fucking
some
list, bro. I
I
can't
know,
even catch up with the
listen,
YouTube links.
point.
Got
At
Bret
least you
Hart and
watch-
Shawn Michaels coming out of my
thank you
fucking
for-
ears.
Thank you for at least watching the stuff that I send you, not this fucking prick with ears who has a fucking dusty.
You know
Chris
what?
watches.
I
years old.
I
You piece of
just
shit.
was restraining myself right now because I was about to say, speaking of Sergeant Slaughter, you cocksucker motherfucker.
Well,
if you want
don't
to take it
start
this
this,
way,
dude.
we're
Dude, we're
48
not
minutes
gonna
into
go-
the show. I was going to
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
the
we're-
peace,
No.
but you want me to
Gonna
rip the
derail.
Band-Aid off and
Don't
kick
do
the
it.
goddamn
Don't
hornet's
fucking do it.
nest.
Don't fucking kick
I'll
the
tell
hornet's
you.
nest.
We'll
I'll
save
tell
it
you.
for
Do it.
Friday.
Yeah, we'll
Don't do
save
it.
it. We'll save it.
We're celebrating.
Vin-
We'll give Shawn
Bret
Michaels a
Hart,
break.
there's
one
more to the
day.
Bret Hart story that
We're not giving
already-
Shawn Michaels
Vin
a
already
break.
identified you as a delusional.
Shawn Michaels
so we
doesn't
don't-
deserve a break.
I watched
out of your-
Well, that
Sergeant
was
Slaughter's
specifically.
Sergeant Slaughter's Slaughterhouse podcast. I watched it yesterday, the day before, and Sergeant Slaughter gave his take on the whole Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart thing, and it was pretty insightful from
Two
Sergeant
fucking
Slaughter's
guys
perspective.
who signed the contract that you should listen to: Bret Hart or Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon is retired, and he never talks about
You
the
guys
fucking
remember the
contract.
time when Stone Cold stunned The Rock, and then The
Look.
Rock fucking folded up like a bowling
Look,
pin?
Shawn Michaels in a brown suit.
We
that
can, we'll
piece
never.
of
Get,
shit.
why did I
Commissioner
say it? I
Michaels.
knew even. Why did I reference it? I literally said
and
it's
I
coming
wasn't
out of
gonna
my
say
ears.
it, but then
we're
he
on
said
a nice hum.
he
We're
started
just
it.
literally going.
He
Oh,
started
YouTube
it.
links and all the history and the
Son
Sheik,
of a
and it's
bitch. I was
great.
minding my own
Ain't nothing,
business.
man. I ain't upset nobody. I ain't
Deteriorates.
upset nobody. I ain't
This
saying
is what
nothing. I
everybody's
ain't
here
upset
for
nobody.
anyway, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're
Listen,
looking
ring
for.
the fucking bell because I'm too far away
Nah,
to
nah.
fucking
You
strangle
didn't
this
want-
motherfucker
Oh,
tonight.
we still gotta
here's
do
the thing.
Friday.
Are you calling me a liar? Or are you calling Sergeant Slaughter a liar?
I'm calling Sergeant Slaughter and you a piece of shit.
I'm saying
Rob,
that.
oh,
I'm saying.
that. Hey,
We're gonna have to draw the line there, Joe.
yeah, hey.
I'm saying.
So
I'll have to
anyone
Stone Cold
who's
Stunner your ass
anyone
to a
who
table.
is
I
not
wouldn't
on
fight.
Brett's side is a piece of shit.
So here's a short story. I don't need to listen to that podcast. All due respect, we love Sarge. He's a friend of the podcast. We appreciate his everything that he's done for the podcast. At the end of the day, as soon as he said 3.5 million, I knew he was fucking way off his fucking rocker. There's no one in the history of the WWE that's made 3.5 fucking million dollars, let alone in the late fucking 1990s. So the numbers just don't add up. We're definitely gonna fucking go in depth on this conversation because I about had
These
enough
guys are
of your
going to
fucking
tear
shit.
each other
I've had
apart
enough of
on
your
Friday.
shit.
So
When I
tune
get
in
back
to
in the
next
fucking
Friday
studio,
because we're
when
going to
I
have
get
our
in
own
that fucking
wrestling
basement,
match.
Ring the fucking bell. You better be fucking ready. And if Rob is not there to fucking restrain me, you're getting a fucking sharpshooter.
So
Anyway,
You happy?
we're gonna move on.
we're T
to,
minus 10 minutes from
I'm gonna be the bigger man.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Christ.
we have
like
a
Shawn
topic
Michaels
that we
had to
want to
be.
kind of go over. We
Who's
haven't
not the
done this
bigger
topic
man?
on the
Had to
podcast
be.
in a very, very long time. We're gonna
Jesus
do
Christ.
for the first time in a long time. Who stays? Who goes? And
Yeah,
it's gonna be
who's
the
there? Who's going?
attitude era.
We don't even
of
know.
football.
Who is it, Joe?
All right. So you got three choices. Not one,
Hells, what's up,
not two, but three. So your choices are, and if you pick this person, they didn't exist. So their entire history in professional wrestling didn't happen, didn't exist. Now I'm going to refrain from using Stone Cold because I think all four of us, none of us would vote Stone Cold Steve
Yeah,
Austin
it's a
off
layup.
the island. That's not going to happen. So we're not doing that. And I'm not putting Shawn Michaels in there because 3 out of 4 of us are going to get rid of that piece of shit real fucking
I
quick.
don't even. Depends who's on there. Depends who's on there, dude. I'm telling you.
All right. All right, so first choice, The Rock. Second choice, The Undertaker. And the third choice,
You gotta have 4 choices. Gotta make it
no,
harder.
Guess
you want to make 4 choices?
All right, who's 3?
So top 3, make it really simple because we don't want to spend an hour on this. Rock, Undertaker, Mick Foley. Let's go to Rob first.
It's not
Rob,
fair.
who's
Damn.
getting voted off the island? Who doesn't exist in your world?
That's tough.
It's tough.
That's real tough because
Yeah.
you know, like it's either you get rid of The Rock or you get rid of like one of the greatest matches in the entire Attitude Era, because then
That's
you don't
true,
have
too.
Mick Foley versus
You don't
fucking
have one
Undertaker.
part of
That's
that
a great
match.
point.
That's why you got.
If you
know
get
what I
Mick
mean?
Foley, you get
Triple
rid of
H
Mick
in
or the
there.
Undertaker, you have no hell in
It's
a
like
cell.
Yeah,
The
put-
Rock's entire career.
He's out.
Triple H
That's
is-
gone. Sorry.
Triple H is out.
Triple H is out. You're out.
Even
dude.
That's why I
though,
didn't
even
put
though
him.
he
That's why I didn't
deserves
put
to
him.
be in there for sure.
No,
Like
no,
I
good.
almost
It's-
feel like you can't put Undertaker and Mick Foley together.
No,
It's-
Yeah, you
that's
could
a three.
DQ him if you want, but
It's-
you got it's.
That is
Nobody's
that
getting
is
rid of the
three.
Undertaker. I don't think.
All right. So Rob, you gotta hear your decision, brother. Gun to the head. Who you taking out?
Shit. God damn.
And I want to hear the why behind it, if you have time. While he's pondering, that,
If I
let me hear
absolutely
your-
have to make a decision,
yeah.
if I absolutely have to make a decision, and it's fucking is absolutely heartbreaking, Mick Foley.
Wow.
That's what
Final
I'm thinking.
answer.
That's like.
Final answer.
Because yes, final answer. Because number one,
Okay.
I fucking loved The Rock. I mean, I like Mick Foley, but I love The Rock. And Undertaker was like a presence, man. I mean, like I remember like being a little kid watching the fucking Undertaker and being terrified because that motherfucker would just keep getting up and shit. Like if I have to say like who had a bigger impression on me, it's not comes down to who I like better because I've never met Mark Calloway. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but like I met Mick Foley, you know, and fucking Rock is the fucking Rock. But as far as having an impression on me, you know, as a kid, it would have to go to The Rock and to The Undertaker.
Fair.
Yeah, that's.
We're gonna kick it over to Vin, but while we're kind of kicking it over to Vin, I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Chat, hit us up, man. Who's getting voted off in your
Who
book?
stays, who goes?
Rock Taker or Mick Foley? Who stays? Who goes?
Jesus.
Vin, who are you taking out?
I mean, you know, Rob's logic there is so sound. It's hard to disagree with that because I watched the WWE for The Rock. You know what I mean? I watched it for that charisma, the Stone Cold, The Rock, all that. Whereas, you know, with Mick was the innovator. I feel like he was the grunt having to do all the heavy lifting to get the WWE to where it got because he did all of that raw ass like ECW, hardcore, backyard. He started in the backyards of Long Island. It might as well be one of our fucking homes. That's where Mick comes from. I didn't know all of that, so I knew Mick Foley through, Mankind and Mr. Sacco and Dude Love. You know what I mean? So yeah, it. Knowing what I know, saying Mick Foley sounds fucking sacrilegious.
No.
But yeah, if I
Thunder
have
Dungeon
to,
says, "Peace out, Mick."
yeah, it's because to the same point with the Undertaker, that was another reason that not only was it a reason to tune in, he changed the whole gig. That just that amount of dedication that he had, and the show that they put on, it transformed everything. And that's the stuff that you're seeing and receiving. Where
We got some
again with
controversy
Mick,
in the chat. Hell says Taker's got to go.
Taker's gotta go. How can you get rid of the Undertaker?
I mean, not for
The
nothing.
tombstone, the choke slam,
the church bell at the beginning of his music, his intro.
What was fucking Mick
is an
Foley's
arguable
finisher?
second
Tell me what
place
Mick Foley's
after the
finisher
Mandible
was.
Claw.
The Mandible Claw.
Thank you, thank you,
Mr.
Chris.
Sacco.
But
he put on the sock. Mr. Sacco because he would put on the sock and then
he would
give you the
choke them.
Mandible
No,
Claw.
I
And that was
know.
later on.
Okay.
So
but
Vin, are you putting that on the lanyard?
Yeah, I'm
Is that
going
your
with. I'm
final
sorry,
answer?
Mick Foley. I'm sorry.
We got two for Mick. If you vote him out, sweet, it's a wrap. So let me hear it.
I feel like it's not a fair between the three of them because I feel like Foley's career in
just met him.
I did just meet him. Well, Foley's career though in WWF was shorter than Rock's. I mean, maybe Austin's might have even been shorter. I don't know.
Austin was like supernova. That
Man,
shit is...
but I mean,
Mick
obviously,
Foley had a come and go kind of career at the WWE. Where he retired, he came back for a match. Retired, came back for Randy Orton. Retired, came back for Edge. So he's had a longer career than Austin, believe it or not. And he's probably had a longer career than The Rock as well.
Oh, overall, I mean, when you look at all of this, he was in WCW for a while.
Full body of work, Japan.
But I mean,
ECW.
Foley pulls off 3 characters or 4 characters. You have Mankind, Cactus Jack, Dude Love, and Mick Foley himself.
Right. The commish.
So, he's been 4 characters, was able to transcend just being, one
Backyard
type of
wrestler.
guy. Yeah, he was able to, not even when his body was failing him, switch to being hilarious, and writing books, and he does so much good. And an Undertaker just, you can't get rid of the Undertaker. So, The Rock,
hard.
I love The Rock. But I've always kind of, when we're talking about Austin versus Rock, for me it was always, I love you, Rock, but I mean, I'm going with Austin. You know what I mean? That's how it always was. I'm going with Austin here. So he was always kind of, because of Austin,
secondary, yeah.
Second in my mind at least. I liked him, and obviously, man, it's an impossible choice. As these who stays, who goes are always impossible choices. And you know what?
They have no real impact.
You know why
on
I'm gonna
reality.
get rid of The Rock? I'll tell you why. Because if we get rid of The Rock from wrestling, he still could have, been he still has
Something
Hollywood.
else?
He's still got Hollywood going for him. You know what I mean?
No, he's
And
not
maybe
You're saying
president
he
one day.
disappears forever, so you don't get Black Adam. You don't get
You
any
get
of that
nothing.
shit.
You get no really
didn't
good
exist.
You don't get any of his movies
He
either.
he said at the beginning he did not exist. He does not exist.
So they're getting snapped.
So we're snapping out Mick Foley for
But it's
Rob,
coming
Mick
from
Foley
the perspective and the approach of, we're talking about wrestling right now. And when I think about
at
wrestling,
least you know about all these 3, and it's not like fucking Zelda where you never played a Zelda and you never watched Lord of the Rings. Jesus
Right.
Christ! So at least you actually have some input on these 3. Rob is shaking his head.
I'm snapping Rock only because
Or Donnie Brasco.
I can't snap Foley, and Undertaker can't be snapped either. So it's gonna be The Rock because he's not gonna get snapped anyway. It's gonna be somebody else, probably Foley. So I'm voting Rock.
Wow.
So this is going to be a really weird one now. This is going to be like the first time ever live on the podcast that I agree with Chris Sweet, and I'm also going to vote
It's not
off
the
The
first
Rock.
time.
And I'll tell you, first time in a long time.
Maybe on the show.
Yeah. I'm voting off The Rock because I think he was interchangeable. I think there was other guys that you can kind of put in that spot that probably didn't do it nearly as good as him. No one electrified the audience. No one had the mic work that he did. I would put The Rock in the pantheon of Mount Rushmore microphone skills of all time. He's up there with Ric Flair. He's up there with Roddy Piper. He's one of the greatest of all time.
He's even, I think he's even above them on the mic because he can
I
make you
agree.
laugh at anyone. He was like,
I agree.
and he can make you laugh
I
at
agree.
Austin. You know, nobody was safe from The Rock's fucking burns.
The reason I can't get rid of The Undertaker is because if you get rid of The Undertaker, you're getting rid of 30 years.
Yeah.
You're getting rid of 30 years of memories, and you're getting rid of Kane, and you're getting rid of all these other guys who kind of were inspired or brought along because of The Undertaker. So I can't get rid of The Undertaker. And for me, Mick Foley, I think Hell's brought up a great point, is he revolutionized the hardcore scene and made it mainstream in the WWE. I don't know that the Attitude Era would have taken on that level of violence and that level of aggression without Mick Foley being thrown off a Hell in a Cell. So if you get rid of Mick Foley, there's no Hell in a Cell match. You don't have that.
You don't have
memory.
the Triple H match. You don't have the Undertaker Hell in a Cell, the Triple H Hell in a Cell. And then I thought about my favorite Rock match, which is him versus Mick Foley, which is the most hardcore wrestling match that ever was on a pay-per-view.
Royal Rumble?
Yeah, he smashes him over the head like 13 times, you know, and that was Rock versus Foley. So, you know, yeah, all of those matches. There were so many. Him versus Edge even. Like, man, the most memorable moments is being in the living room with my family, air conditioners on, fucking pay-per-views going, the lights are off, a big screen TV, it's the 90s, and Mick Foley going up against somebody and getting his ass fucking kicked. So
I love Mick Foley. I loved Mick Foley for before he came to the WWF. I loved him in ECW. And then when he came to the WWF, they brought him in as Mankind, kind of like a Hannibal Lecter type of character where he had a mask and he pulled his hair out and he would sit in the dark with rats and things like that. So he created like a character that is just, a memorable character that will go on forever. The Rock is The Rock. He's untouchable. But The Rock makes shitty movies, so I don't really care about his fucking movie career. Those fucking movies suck. I don't care what anybody fucking says.
The Rundown was great.
The Tooth Fairy deserved an Oscar.
With Christopher Walken, The Rundown was a great movie.
Hey, baby, maybe you walking over here, The Rock. Smell what you're cooking, baby.
Guys, I just want to let you know, the show did start.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, if you need to cut us off at any point, Vin, and you want to kind of talk through any of the things that you're seeing, absolutely go for it. So we're tied 2-2. So it's up to the chat to kind of vote one of these three out. So let's see what the
right
chat
now,
is.
hey, Mick is out. Mick has 3, right?
Yeah, look.
Oh, wait, no.
To say, I was taking all the heat in the chat for voting Rock, but Joe voted him too.
No, it's split down the middle because they both voted Rock and we both voted Mick.
Right. So as we're kind of letting Vin kind of watch through like this great documentary, Rob, why don't you walk us through some of your most recent acquisitions and what'd you pick up recently?
Oh yeah, so this was for Chris. I ended up going down to Hassel to visit
the
Mitch.
infamous piece of shit tuxedo suit figure. There you go.
Brown suit.
Commissioner Michaels.
The brown suit.
This is a piece of shit. So another cool little piece that I ended up getting.
Well, tell them the whole story,
I have
Rob.
one of these.
There's a story behind that.
What the fuck happened to it?
Tell them the whole story with the brown suit, because it's been like fucking a month and a half or 2 months that we were supposed to get this thing, right?
That was a great episode.
That is badass.
I
used to have
that. Of course, I do, but I don't know where it is, and it's pissing me off. So
I can't believe the sticker is that pristine, like the WWF sticker.
Really, like it's not coming up in any corners at all. Like
that is amazing. You definitely need to cut those ropes and tighten them up for sure.
I know. In fact, I might let Chris do that for me because he did such a good job on his ring. I might let him do it on mine.
Yeah,
but the third thing that I picked up, and this is actually a pretty cool one, is this is a vintage Mr. Sinister.
Yeah.
But this is a variant because the original one that I had the goatee and he had a blue cape with a red collar. And if you look at the back here, you'll see that's the classic look for him. So this one is actually a variant. But the reason I scooped him was because he was the first X-Men figure I ever got. First one.
Jesus
Very
Christ,
first
these
one.
guys were good.
Yep.
And so back to wrestling real quick. Would you agree with this statement, Joe? That the gong from the Undertaker's entrance theme would be a second place, hyping a crowd to the glass shattering.
I would say top 3, like first line, first noise, first
Like the
signs
glass
of a
shattering, definitely
glass
top
shattering,
spot. There's question.
gong,
But
and
you also
then
have the
I would say,
if you
"If you
smell. Yeah, when that
That would
breaks
probably.
through.
I would definitely say that the. Yeah, definitely.
Then there's also Hogan's thing, you know. Bam, bam, bam,
Yeah.
You know?
The other one too is, "Are you ready?"
Yeah. That was a good one.
You know.
Talking about
Wasn't doing for
rings,
me.
pristine condition. Rob, I bought new ropes on Amazon.
Did you?
Yeah, I looked up, like, they're not as elastic as I might like, but, yeah.
So
Fun little
I have a
project.
new pickup too, and I kind of want to talk through some of the stuff that we ordered recently, Rob, for pre-order. My most recent pickup, I ordered this probably about 8 months ago when it first went on pre-order under WrestlingCollectibles.com. It's a ringside exclusive NWO Wolfpack Elite Hollywood Hulk Hogan from Ringside Collectibles. This is a limited edition run. It's in limited edition packaging. It is from the infamous Finger Poke of Doom, where this is a night after Kevin Nash actually defeated Goldberg and ruined his undefeated streak. He wrestled Hulk Hogan on Nitro, and everyone thought it was going to be like, you know, the NWO kind of battling it out, and Hulk Hogan poked Kevin Nash with his finger. Kevin Nash laid down, and Hulk Hogan pinned him and became the new champion in WCW, and spray painted the WCW belt in red spray paint, signifying Hulk Hogan joining the Wolfpack, and they merged NWO black and white with NWO Wolfpack, and this is the kind of figure to kind of represent that. So super cool figure. I'm really stoked to kind of have this one. Hulk Hogan's one of my all-time favorites, so I'm really big onto collecting not a lot of figures, but I collect a lot of Hulk Hogan figures, a lot of Randy Savage figures, and obviously you guys know Bret the Hitman Hart is my guy forever. So that's my most recent pickup. I do know that Rob and I picked up a pre-order, and it's probably not coming out for at least a year or so, but Rob and I both pre-ordered the Mega Powers 2-pack Elite from Ringside Collectibles, which for me is one of the coolest freaking 2-packs you can ever have. They have clasped hands, so they can kind of redo the Mega Powers handshake. They come with full soft goods, from Randy Savage's headband to Hulk Hogan's Hulk Rules T-shirt to Randy Savage's Mega Powers robe. So that I cannot. There's no way I'm not getting that. Like, I have to have that. In fact, I might even order 2 of them because I love the Mega Powers so much. I kind of want to open one of them. The other thing that I ordered that was released at Comic-Con, I actually got on board with this, was a Mattel Creations exclusive Elite Cody Rhodes in Elite packaging. So I got that, and that ships in a couple of months. So I'm kind of looking forward to that figure as well.
Got a couple
Rob,
of
did you
Lucy's
pick
over
up,
here.
If you
did
think the
order anything
fucking
recently?
all
Go
right,
ahead,
let me
man.
say,
Go ahead.
if you think the internet is mean, try going to a stadium where everybody's saying "Die Rocky Die."
Oh, I was there.
That's fucking
Yeah.
intense, bro. That is
Yeah.
intense. But it's interesting because The Rock, you know, current day Rock is like, they could just see through that happy persona that I was putting on. This like, I'm gonna give 110% kind of bullshit.
It
Whereas
would
like
have worked in the 80s. It wouldn't work in 1996. you know?
100%, he had to.
His sunglasses really made the
transform.
character. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm realizing that
The
as I
the
watch this.
$500 shirt.
Yeah, the 500. You'd always have the.
$500 shirt. Yeah.
It's funny. That's how Dr. Disrespect is to me. Dr. Disrespect took his whole thing from The Rock. You know what I mean? Like, he is that same.
Well, it
This
made him-
shirt cost this much. My car cost this. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
He
rocks
was
the
Johnny
shades.
Bravo, like, you know. But then when he did take off the shades, when he used his eyes, they were so expressive. Like Joe was talking about before, when his eyes would pop out of his head, when somebody would say or do something. The Rock's eyes, man, nobody does it like him.
Give me the Jerry the King squeals, Chris.
Hold on, wait. Let me grab him.
I think he's really hurt, there, King.
I think he's really hurt there, King.
Fucking Austin just
Son
telling
of
the
a
cameraman, get the fuck out of the way. Get the fuck out of the way. I'm going to the turnbuckle.
I love the way that it looked back then too. Like it's a cement floor with like just a mat around the ring. The railings were metal railings. That's what made I feel like wrestling just better back then. Was that it
Why does
looked
The Rock look
grungy.
so weird in that?
It's the 90s.
It was more raw. It was raw.
Raw.
And also you have this dynamic that's playing as well that it's unspoken for sure, but it's Texan Stone Cold Steve Austin versus the African American Nation of Domination. You know what I'm saying? Like this racial dynamic is definitely playing out heavily.
Well, I don't know,
especially to the crowd.
I feel like that's what I admired about their feud was it never went there like that. You know what I mean? Like there might have been undertones in people's minds, but like
exactly
they were able to...
just to the crowd, not to them. I don't think it's done. It's constructed exactly that way.
So to me, how they kind of looked at that, like Stone Cold was the blue collar, everyday worker, and The Rock was like this corporate, entitled, kind of rich, guy, lavish lifestyle. He likes, nice things.
He inherited his
truck, and The
it was
Rock
a legacy.
Yeah.
He inherited his whole thing, so people would even be more like, fuck you, you fucking, you're not your dad.
Well, the biggest heat was between Stone Cold and Vince ended up using The Rock as his, I don't know what you call it, proxy, where The Rock was with the corporation. And then that's what ended up kicking The Rock off was when the corporation turned on him.
Right.
But he was able to
Do you
kind of,
remember that whole segue suite for Survivor Series 1998? Do you remember that?
More context. You're talking about when they turned on The Rock?
So Survivor Series 1998 was a single elimination tournament to crown the undisputed, vacated WWF champion at the time. And in the main event, the two that made it to the finals was Mankind at the time, who would dress in a white button-down with a tie because he was Vince McMahon's so-called hand-picked corporate champion. And The Rock at the time had transitioned into a babyface. The Rock had gotten so popular in his time at the Nation that the fans stopped saying "Die Rocky Die" and stopped booing him, and they started repeating all his catchphrases, and The Rock became a huge babyface. So now you have the finals of the Survivor Series World Championship tournament, and you have a heel Mankind versus a babyface Rock, and the finish of that match was Vince and Shane actually hitting Mankind and turning on him, and The Rock put Mankind in a sharpshooter, and Vince McMahon rang the bell. So he screwed Mankind like he screwed Bret Hart the previous year, but this time they were all in on it. They all knew about the finish. And at this point, The Rock transitioned into a bad guy again, and this is when he became the ultimate rival for Stone Cold Steve Austin, because Stone Cold was the guy. He was the main attraction for the show, and they needed a foil for him. They needed someone who was as big, as popular, and The Rock kind of elevated himself as a babyface, and now he was able to be seen at that level of Stone Cold. So you fast forward to The Rock being the world champion for the first time in '98 Survivor Series, and then they collide at WrestleMania 15 for the first time for that epic match, which I'm sure you'll see it on the show tonight.
Incredible build-ups. Yeah, it's a real, they call the wrestling game, it's a dance, or it used to be anyway. And that's tough, that how much they're dancing with the audience and the crowd, and having to understand the crowd's energy and like where it's going. Well, back then, I guess they were maybe more in touch with it, but they see Vince and Jim Ross seem so aware of the audience and the crowd and the energy they're putting out there, and to kind of jujitsu it and turn it into like story arcs. It is impressive fucking work that they do.
Yeah.
This shit's on commercial. So yeah, it also, it's interesting. We had you said The Rock, and it would be Rock, Undertaker, and this and that, and you said, well, The Rock would still be the movie star. he could still aspire. If he didn't have wrestling, he could have been something else, right, Sweet? That's what your point
He
before.
transcended wrestling, and he's the biggest, the highest paid Hollywood star right now.
But it looks like in his personal relationship, like with Stone Cold, he would have never aspired to be what he became.
There was
if
no
he didn't...
personal animosity between the two of them. There was competition.
No. I'm talking about a competitive. Like The Rock is talking about it. Like, I wanted to be the guy. He was the guy, and you have to outwork that guy. You have to be better, and you have to, So it's just to see how much The Rock evolved himself around what Austin did. It tells me like shit. He wouldn't have become what he became if there is no Austin. It's like. It's incredible.
I just think about how spoiled we were. Like we don't realize it now.
And
so
many
in
main event stars.
But we had so much stuff in the 1990s, and not only in professional wrestling. Like in my opinion, we had the best sports, we had the best music, we had the best movies, we had the best cartoons.
About the music.
I mean,
it didn't age well. A lot of the 90s music, but. I get what you're saying. Well,
for me,
the best TV for sure.
The best TV, the best movies, the best athletes were in the 90s. Mike Tyson, Michael
toys.
Jordan. The best toys, not even close.
Some of the best video games.
Some of the best video games. So, yeah, we truly were really spoiled. That's why I think we're harder to impress as we get older and we see things. So we're a little jaded when we see, the wrestlers of today. The stars of today, because they just cannot compete and they cannot compare to Undertaker, Austin, Rock, Mick Foley, guys like that.
There's a balance,
there's no comparison.
You're right. You're definitely right. I'm kind of not disagreeing entirely, but for the sake of argument, I try to be cognizant of before us, the older people were like, oh, well, back in my day, we had Elvis. Music ain't real music anymore. You know what I mean? Like, how much of it is you're right, things just aren't as good, and how much of it is we're older people now, and it's maybe we're just getting old, and this is part of it.
So I thought about that because my dad used to kind of make fun of me for wrestling. He used to make fun of me for the music I would listen to. I was listening to Metallica or Kill Switch or whatever. What is this shit? This isn't music. This is bullshit.
Exactly.
And he liked doo-wop and big band and fucking Louis Prima.
Right.
Oh Marie, right, Robbie?
Bruno Sammartino.
Oh Marie.
That promo that was just cut.
Twice just because she is so nice,
Angelina.
No, it's at the pizzeria.
If you saw the promo that Austin just cut, because The Rock is in the ring. And Austin interrupts his whole promo, and he's in the control booth, and he's like, I'm the one in control, son. He's like, and when you look down at your beeper and it reads 316, your ass belongs to me. It's just.
That's what I was talking about.
You don't see, I don't watch enough to know now, but that's just too good.
He's dumping the Intercontinental belt.
There it is. The one thing that I never missed, whenever I was home watching Raw or SmackDown or a pay-per-view, whenever Stone Cold Steve Austin's theme music would hit and the glass would break, I don't know, something about me, I would stand up. I could be laying down on the fucking rug with fucking a bowl of cereal right in front of the fucking TV. When that glass broke, I fucking stood up. Every single time. Even when I would go to the shows, I could be in the fucking bleachers, I could be in the front row. When the glass breaks, you get off your ass. Like that is the most iconic thing that I can remember from Stone Cold, even till today. Like when we were watching the live stream of WrestleMania and he came out, I fucking stood up on our fucking podcast because I don't know, that's just my fucking legs go up when Stone Cold Steve Austin's glass breaks. Just a little side note.
What's interesting?
The guy's pure energy.
With this show versus Brett versus Sean, kind of I was touching upon it a little bit earlier. Is with Brett and Sean, there was personal animosity and real life issues between the two of them, and that brought something to their dynamic. But with Rock and Austin, they didn't hate each other. You know what I mean? They respected the shit out of each other.
I would say Rock and Austin was the most competitive rivalry, and Brett and Sean was the most lifelike rivalry.
Yeah,
like it was a real hatred. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't a part of the storyline. Yeah. This is real deal. No kayfabe there. So but Rock and Austin, again, I don't know two guys who are more competitive than that. This is like, Michael Jordan going up against Magic Johnson. Like, they want to take each other's heads off.
Well, the other thing, too, is it wasn't just them. You had Triple H, you had fucking Kurt Angle, you had so many other guys entering
They had a supporting cast, but The Rock and Austin were the top two.
Definitely.
Like, you could say what you want about Triple H, Mankind, Kurt Angle, Jericho.
They were always
The Rock
rotating
just said
out.
there wasn't animosity, there was competition. He just the
Competition,
words out of
there you
his
go.
fucking mouth just now.
fucking-
So
I'm not,
and that's what I was thinking. I'm thinking of it, two great sports teams. It's literally you're watching greatness, and usually that stuff devolves into hatred, like Michael and the Pistons, or you know what I mean. Like
ultimately,
eventually,
competition breeds excellence.
and that's when when there's a lack of respect, that's when hatred comes in.
Right.
If one doesn't have respect for the other, it morphs into hatred. So, it shows how also the WWE was evolving. Now it was reaching this a new way to tell this story without the animosity of the Brett and Sean kind of
So
thing.
I don't know if they're talking about this in the show tonight, because I'll get to watch it after we recap here. But if you look at like the fork in the road, and if you look at their road ahead of what led them to get to their spot, Stone Cold Steve Austin went through a lot of trials and tribulations to get to be the top guy. He was ultimately fired in WCW because he was injured, and they said, "You're not really contributing. You'll never be a top guy. We don't really see anything for you. You'll never be in the same vein as Hulk Hogan."
Not today, Steve.
This doesn't work for us today, buddy. We're gonna go ahead and let you go. Yeah. So Stone Cold had a lot of fire built up, and he was sitting home with a bad knee, a fucked up elbow, and Paul Heyman called him, and he invited him to come into an ECW show. And Stone Cold's like, "I can't work, kid. My fucking knee and my elbow's all fucked up." And Paul Heyman's like, "Well, I got a TV show, and all I need you to do is just grab the microphone and talk." And Stone Cold delivered with his eyes, his ice cold blue
Greatest
eyes,
promo of all time.
the greatest promo of all time, where he said, basically, summing up, he said, "I'm going to be the star that everybody thought that I could be." And that actually brought attention to Vince McMahon. When Vince McMahon saw that, true story here, Bret Hart was actually the one who kind of hinted to Vince McMahon to bring Stone Cold in. Because at the time they were trying to kind of build their roster up. They had lost Hall and Nash and all these guys. So they were looking to kind of bring in guys from other areas. And Bret Hart positioned Stone Cold as one of the guys he'd like to see be brought into the WWF. And he thought that he could have great matches with him. Lo and behold, they probably had the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. But that's a lot of a reason why Stone Cold accredits
He said there would be no Stone Cold without
launch.
Bret Hart.
Correct. So kudos to that for Bret to kind of see like the talent that he had. And even still, they brought Stone Cold in as the ringmaster, which sucked. I mean, again, he had to overcome that.
I saw that in the biography, dude. Oh my god, they were wasting him so.
That's the thing, man.
He was getting more angry too. He was just getting more. I don't know if you have to go through it to then become what he became.
You do.
But
I mean, everyone. Triple H was Hunter Hearst Helmsley. The Rock was Rocky.
You got to be a
Maivia.
jabroni before you become a face.
Kane was Isaac Yankem. He was a fucking dentist. The list
These
goes
guys
on. Stone Cold
evolved
was the
so
ringmaster. You can keep rattling.
You talked then about you said about the conversation earlier that Vince had with the locker room, where he had a meeting
it was a real
of the
serious
locker
conversation.
room, and he said, "We basically are going to kind of let you kind of put your own into that character, and we're going to stop with the cartoonish, dentists like Sweet said, and Garbage Man and clowns.
Sounds familiar.
And all this stupid shit, and we're going to let you kind of run with it and kind of create your own thing." And that's where Stone Cold came up with his character. I
love that, actually. That's a great story he tells real quick. His wife at the time made him like a cup of tea or coffee, and she's like, "Drink it before it gets stone cold." And he was just like, "That's fucking it. That is it." They were trying to be Mr. Frost, all that dumb shit. Everyone was rallying.
McFrost. Yeah.
They were so
Terrible.
bad. Everyone in the WWE could tell you the terrible names that were on that list.
Mick
Thank
So
Foley.
yeah, you got to let these guys fucking do their own thing. It would be smart if they tried to. I feel like Cody Rhodes has a lot of control over his destiny, and I feel like with maybe the younger guys, like let them run, let them do their things.
The biggest thing
That's why
they say with Vince too was that if you said no to an idea, then you would get stuck doing whatever the hell he said. But what all these guys did, Mick Foley, he was supposed to be what was it? It was like some what the hell was it? Mason the Mutilator was supposed to be his name.
Mutilator.
Mason
the
the
Mutilator.
Mutilator. And he said the famous words, if you want to like make it, is instead of just saying no, I don't want to do that, you say I like it, but what if? And you come to the table with something else instead. Like you have to come to the table with an idea yourself. You don't shoot down somebody's idea, but you say, but what if?
Are you trying to say that Bret Hart would just shoot down ideas and?
I like that you're connecting
Oh,
those
don't do
dots. That's what they
Fucking
say.
do it,
That's
bro.
what Eric
Get
Bischoff
up it.
says. But
Fucking do it,
you
bro.
know, we'll talk about that
Listen,
later.
that segues into The Rock. You talk about The Rock's path to get to where he was. The Rock was a walk-on the Miami Hurricanes, and he played with Warren Sapp. So he was on that great, 1990s Miami Hurricane team, and ultimately he got hurt and he got cut and he didn't make the NFL. He tried some CFL stuff where he played in Canada under the Calgary team, which gave him an affinity for Bret Hart and the Hart family at the time. He spent some time in the dungeon. He spent some time with the Hart family while he was over in Canada and things like that. So yeah, Bret Hart has a real affinity for the Hart family as well. The Rock has an affinity for the Hart family as well. But he talks about all this time in his book. He was flat broke, moving around, and he had like $7 in his pocket. And finally, his dad made a call to Pat Patterson, and he finally asked his dad to train him to become a professional wrestler. Once he was ready, Pat Patterson came down to check him out, and then they signed him on as a new rookie. And then they kind of molded him into like the Rocky Maivia character, which the fans despised, fucking absolutely hated it. Die, Rocky, die. Rocky sucks. So he had to go through that evolution to get put into the nation, to kind of try to build his own character and to put a lot of his smack talk that he would use on the football field, and he would use that in a pro wrestling promo. So he would start referring to himself in the third person. Well, The Rock says, and The Rock says this. You look The Rock in the eye, you jabroni.
JR gave him that idea. The third person.
Yeah. So I mean, that was revolutionary. Like no one talked like that. No one said shit like that. So he stood out immediately.
Yeah, it's definitely a great rivalry, and I think when people think about it nowadays, it's not divisive like it is Bret and Shawn. It's everyone loves the both of them. These shows are good because they get people like Vin.
Did you have any Stone Cold or Rock figures when you were growing up?
What was that?
Rock. I asked if you had any figures of Austin or The Rock when you were growing up.
No, actually. Now that I think about it. No, I'm sorry, I was watching the show.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think so far? What you're watching? Talk us through.
Oh, it's cool. They're going through, talking about what's his name? David Arquette is talking about how like his mother was so invested in the wrestling that like when The Rock went corporate and Sarah Michelle Gellar made a movie with The Rock, she wouldn't talk to Sarah Michelle Gellar because she said he had a choice and he went corporate. It's funny. It just goes to show like the cultural phenomenon that these guys were. They really were like the top fucking. Like they were the coolest cats in the fucking world. Like it was the biggest rivalry, like you said, in the history of wrestling. You could always say Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, or Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair, but nobody did it like fucking The Rock and Stone Cold. Nobody in any era of wrestling. And,
Agreed.
It really stands out. Vince's voice.
Oh yeah, well Vince was heavily involved. The fact that
he talks. like this.
Yeah.
That's so
The fact that
fucking-
they were so competitive really drove the product forward. That's, they made everybody around them great. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a good point.
There it is, the beer truck, the beer bath.
My favorite is the fucking total sell job where they're trying to swim out of the fucking puddle of beer in the ring.
That's what's happening right now on the show.
How
He's about
fucking
to do the beer
ridiculous
bath.
is that? How ridiculous
Yeah,
is
the
that?
truck's rolling in right now.
Yeah, is it Vince? It's Vince who's doing the swimming, right?
Right.
The Rock's
So
face.
good.
I mean, yeah, The Rock, he nails facial expressions, definitely.
But how fucking hype, like the crowd, like just look at the crowd, man. They're having such a fucking good
electric.
time.
It's-
They are by far getting more than they bargained for with their money's worth. I mean, we'll never experience like energy like that. I've been through a lot of shows, and some of the loudest ovations I've ever heard was when Stone Cold or The Rock would come out. So
yeah.
Oh my god, this is great.
I wanted to kind of get the stack of ticket stubs that I had, but we didn't have enough time. So next time we do a show, I'm going to kind of go into my my storage space, and I'm going to try to dig out a stack of wrestling ticket stubs from all the shows that I attended. It's about like this. There we go. Stephen Bias is in here. He goes, I know one thing, The Rock hates Shawn Michaels. He does. Because Shawn was a piece of shit to The Rock, too. Absolutely, he does.
That's hilarious. Never heard that story.
Oh, yeah.
Now The
There's a
Rock
reason
can
why
buy
The
and
Rock-
sell Shawn
Well,
Michaels.
he was,
There's a reason why The Rock never wrestled
was the
Shawn
threat.
Michaels. They bullied him and they picked on him, and they tried to bury him when The Rock was coming up. So, where Bret Hart took him under his wing and helped him because he's not a piece of shit like Shawn Michaels.
Shawn Michaels helped make Stone Cold. You
He
can't
did
deny
not
that.
make Stone
What are
Cold.
you talking
He
about?
didn't
They had
do
Shawn versus
shit.
Stone Cold
Get
in main
outta
event at
here.
WrestleMania with Mike Tyson,
Get out of
dude.
here. Bret Hart made Stone
See,
Cold.
this is my
at
problem with
WrestleMania
you, Joe. Hold
13.
on, listen. This is why
Get
you're a
outta
piece
here.
of shit. You gotta at
outta
least
here.
acknowledge some. You have to acknowledge
Oh.
Shawn Michaels' contributions to
Shawn
the
Michaels
wrestling.
didn't even want to wrestle
See,
that
that's
fucking
this is
match.
my problem. Is you
Oh,
guys are getting
Shawn
sucked into
Michaels.
this black hole
He
way of
lost-
thinking.
He lost
You might
his
not
fucking
like him as a
smile.
guy, but you can't deny the contribution that he's made to wrestling history. And the fucking main
All right.
event of WrestleMania with Mike Tyson was
All right,
fucking epic.
I'm gonna end
And
this
it ended
right
with
for you
Shawn
right now.
Michaels getting laid
So
out.
you're a big Shawn Michaels fan, right?
I
Shawn's like your
was growing
favorite.
up as a kid. Now, he's...
All right, so he's up there. He's one of your top,
Redneck
like,
piece of trash. Holy shit.
Whatever.
That's great.
Give me 10 Shawn Michaels matches.
I'm not
There
gonna
you go.
fucking
Stone Cold
sit
goes
here
over the
like
bridge.
somebody. I can't remember what I fucking ate for dinner yesterday. You want me to remember? List 10.
You can't
great Shawn
remember
Michaels?
10.
Well,
can't
right
remember-
off the bat, I could say fucking however many matches he had with Undertaker.
Okay, where were they though? What kind of what
Oh,
show were they?
WrestleMania.
All right, guys, you're getting in the
What-
weeds.
Yeah, we're gonna
WrestleMania.
get in the weeds if you want me to list 10. I could.
I want to hear it.
On the
wait.
dungeon
I got
did say Rock hates Sean ?
Absolutely, yes, he does.
Well, he did.
I
He
assume
probably
because
doesn't now.
it's tough. If you're a legacy of anything, that's tough.
No, he still hates him.
Yeah, he still hates him. Oh shit, it's so funny. Oh,
Yeah,
there's
well.
Austin in the fucking monster
That's
truck.
between them. What's this
Look at
here?
this
They
thing.
had real heat. Jim
There,
Cornette used
there,
to talk
there's
about it.
lots of guys. There's lots of guys who don't like Shawn Michaels.
Yes.
Not-
Well, no,
not
no,
just
no.
Bret
Well,
Hart.
Yes, let's
Well, he
talk
had to-
about that again. Let's
he had
bring
to
up-
apologize to. He apologized to a lot of people, and that's good enough.
Well, he
for
never
everybody.
apologized to The Rock. So that's,
Yeah, I'm curious actually because I feel like Dwayne Johnson will never talk about that. Never. I don't think it'll ever come up. but-
I'll send you some stuff tonight, and you'll
Yeah,
check it
Dwayne
out.
Johnson hates Vin Diesel too, but what do you want?
That's so funny.
Vin Diesel is also like a
Stephen Bias
tool I
says
heard.
Steve Austin
kinda
almost
weird.
caused
On the
a
movie
movie
set.
collapse in Raw appearance in West Virginia. It was at the Huntington Civic Center. It was the last Raw in Huntington. Yeah. So Steve's from West Virginia. Is one of my good buddies. Absolutely. He almost made the
Dude.
Madison Square Garden roof collapse several times. 100%.
I
Absolutely.
mean, how could you not? Sean is the greatest sports entertainer in history.
Steve, I'll drive.
Steven's
to
just picking
West
on Joe
Virginia
now.
and
Just
kick
yeah,
the
now
fucking
yeah.
piss out of you right
We're
now.
just gonna devolve
does
this
that.
whole show.
That's
we're gonna
just
have a-
Steve,
all right.
Steve move.
Hold on. So, all right, The Rock lost to Austin. So that was the Intercontinental title.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It's fucking hilarious watching Vince's face too, and also Jim Ross. Oh, they got
Oh,
Owen.
did they show
Damn,
the
they got.
beer truck? Is that what they just showed?
So Owen is the one that injured
Yes.
Austin. That's
Owen
what I did
Hart
see that
gave
in
Stone
the.
Cold a pile driver right on his head,
Right.
neck.
Yeah.
Said he bruised his spinal cord. He didn't
He
actually
bruised
break
it. Yeah,
his
nothing
Yeah.
broke. That's fucking. And he's obviously a thick son of a
finish
bitch.
of the
So
match
he's
was
lucky
awkward.
that he had.
Yeah.
That's where those muscles came into play. Because if he didn't have that and his neck was scrawny, bro, that shit like you're done. I can't believe that. Yeah, that's fucked up. So yeah, they just showed that. They showed the Owen thing there.
Shawn and Jericho, Shawn and Kurt Angle, Shawn and Triple H, Shawn and Undertaker, Shawn and Razor
Shawn.
Ramon in the ladder match.
You're not going to say Sean and Brett? You're not gonna say
Shawn and Brett, it's fucking just to
Listen,
name
I
a few.
know Sweet Chin music, and I know all that shit. I remember all that shit.
He's
The
not your
worst
boy.
finishing
He's
move in
still
history.
no matter what, yeah, he stood out
D-Generation
huge.
X was one of the greatest fucking things growing up as a kid. Everybody had a fucking suck it shirt on.
I fucking hated them because they picked
My
on
mother
Sarge.
would not let me do
'Cause they
that.
what?
but
They picked on Sarge.
Wow.
They picked on Sarge. Actually, I just watched The Rock tell the Sarge off pretty hard. It was funny.
Sarge was talking about that on
'Cause he was
his,
the commish at the
podcast
time.
yesterday.
He was, he was supposed to be a heel. He fucking worked the Vince.
Well,
Yeah,
he was saying that people didn't like DX at the time, when they were doing that, but they still liked them despite, because the window wiper.
Counterculture.
Because they were counterculture, like you
Right.
said. That's what it was. Oh, they're rule breakers. They don't give a fuck. They tell everybody what everybody else is thinking.
Think you
to
could
their
tell
face.
us
They
what
basically
to do?
have a fucking
Chris, we have any,
like a Rage
updates
Against the
in the chat?
Machine.
Yeah, from the dungeon said, "Be easy on sweets." We have what else we got going on? We've acknowledged pretty much what's been going on in the chat. He said Joe and Sweets teaming
Hogan
up
Piper.
when we voted off The Rock. Yeah, it was fun to do Who Stays Who Goes though. It's been a while since we had one of those.
Way too long.
Yeah.
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 Rock and Austin chemistry is damn near Hogan Piper.
Yeah.
Oh, Hogan and Piper went
Telling
at
you,
it.
look
They
up-
went for each other's throats.
Really?
Look
Oh,
at that
yeah.
promo
Yeah.
before
That's an era I
WrestleMania.
don't know.
The Limp Bizkit one, My Way. Look up Austin Rock My Way. It was the coolest
The
fucking
greatest
promo.
promo ever to a match for
Yeah.
sure.
Everything. See, that's the thing is everything at that time. All the stars were aligned. The music for all these guys was great. It was memorable. When Austin's glass hit, when you heard "It's as if you smell," all the guys' music was great. The commentary team, you had JR and King. Just the look of the arena, the fucking the grittiness of it.
It was
all.
exciting. Every match was good. That's
Yeah.
what the thing
Yeah.
was.
Every pay-per-view had its own unique set. Remember
Oh,
the
yeah.
backlash
Wasn't
had
this
the
LED
two swinging
bullshit.
blades.
I hate the LED
Yeah.
boards, man. I get why they
Yeah.
do it. It's super cheap and you can make them into anything. But they got very creative with the sets that they would create. You're right.
Yeah.
Backlash had the hooks
Iconic.
swinging around.
Yep.
Every pay-per-view had crazy shit
Like a
going on.
physical thing,
Yeah,
almost like a
like-
circus-esque.
And The Rock and Austin would slam each other on that. Like Mick Foley would get launched into the electrical system or something. I mean, they use all those things as props, which was awesome.
From
Yeah.
the dungeon also. Steven said Shawn and Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, no,
He's
that-
just ribbing. It's a fucking rib. He's
Oh,
ribbing
damn
me.
it. Oh, he's got
Yeah.
me. Damn it.
Well, because that's the match
Yeah.
where Shawn oversold because Hogan kept saying no, no, no. So Shawn was a dick because
Oh,
Hogan
that's
was
right.
kind of
I-
throwing his
yeah.
weight around too, and Shawn's like, okay, I'll just make you look like God then, and he's swimming around pretty much.
It's
That's
typical
what
piece
happens
of
when you
shit.
put
Shawn
two
Michaels.
prima donnas in the fucking ring together.
Exactly.
It was interesting. I watched the Goldberg documentary, and
Oh, you didn't watch that? Let me hear your thoughts on that.
it was very cool. It was interesting. It's funny we're talking about The Rock and his football career, very parallel with Goldberg and his football career. But yeah, it was very interesting to see. And then when Goldberg's, the culmination of Goldberg's streak ended up being Hogan Goldberg, and Goldberg went.
Is that where they used the
over on-
cattle prod on him? Was that the same? Was that
No,
what
no.
broke?
I think
No,
I
yeah,
saw
the
that
cattle
scene.
prod is the one that he lost the streak to Kevin Nash. Scott Hall hit him with the cattle prod, and then he
Right.
lost. But
Yeah,
Vin is talking about the Georgia
You know-
Dome match on Nitro where he beat Hulk Hogan
Georgia
for the world
Dome.
title.
So it was interesting. They were interviewing Hogan, and Hogan was like, when you're really good at this, when you're a real wrestler, it's not planned. He says, like, I didn't really plan out my matches in advance. I would just, it's more of a dance. And Goldberg said, like, going into that match, they had nothing, no prep, nothing, and they just went off each other and how it felt, or I was surprised to see, like, that's how loose they would play it, because it's almost dangerous because you don't know what's going to happen. But Hogan definitely seems very full of himself, I will say. He does seem like he knows that he's the guy that
Wouldn't
made
you be if you were the
wrestling.
top drawing? Yeah,
Tricky Ricky is here, boys. We're out, Tricky Ricky.
Hey! Tricky Ricky's in the house. Yeah, we did sneak one
sneak
in.
the show in. Yeah.
We're new things. We got to keep trying new stuff. This is our... Hey, we've been pretty good, except I screwed up last Sunday, and that's my fault. Sorry, guys. Last Sunday's video is lost in the
in the
ether.
house.
It's in the archives.
Yeah, I have it, but fucking format's fucked. Unless you want to watch it with no audio.
You were saying the Goldberg doc.
Well, it's interesting. We talked a couple of times to your point. The Rock's name has been mentioned alongside football several times, and it all comes full circle with him owning the XFL now. Like that shit's
right.
supposed to start soon, right?
I don't know.
2022,
Well,
or is it 2023?
no, it's not starting this year. There's no way.
That'll be interesting to
Because
see.
I don't know how.
It could be like a good alternative to the NFL.
Well,
So wait, that
season.
means Vince McMahon could come back and he can be the CEO of the XFL.
Who knows? Maybe they'll even get a better video game with an XFL. Because they won't be so tied to the same contracts with fucking EA Sports.
Oh man,
they don't know how to make a fucking game.
The JR interview between Stone Cold and The Rock and
when they're sitting in the locker room.
Yep.
Austin's got that
that.
shirt on right now.
Manager. I don't need Deborah as my manager. Oh, he's got this one on, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
He just returned after the 10 months.
17. I need to beat you, Rock. I need it more than you can possibly imagine.
I need that belt, Rock.
Okay, so the Jim Ross interview here.
But on a professional level, which bleeds over in my personal existence, I need to beat you, Rock. I need it more than anything that you could ever imagine.
Nice.
I needed that championship. I thought The Rock was coming up there. I needed to stay here. So that was a shoot line for me, and he never knew that. I got one reason.
Damn, he didn't know he was going to say that?
It's just that simple.
You know what I want to see? I want to see like a weed version of Stone Cold that just like fucking is always like I want to see them do what they did for beer in the 90s. I want to see them do something like that. Have a character that is doing shit with weed, blow it in people's faces. I don't know. Hey, I mean, Stone Cold was drowning people in beer. Why can't they have a weed guy? Weed's the 2000s.
Pull over there and have the refs.
Weed does not fuel.
What's the fucking bro guy? Bro.
See, but it's never been done well,
RVD needs to come back.
Well, he's still doing stuff, RVD. He still looks great. He's doing stuff in like Japan or whatever, yeah. RVD's one of my favorites, man. He was great.
So when Stone Cold came out with the Austin 316 shirt, Rob Van Dam, when he was in ECW, came out with the RVD 420 says, "I just smoked your ass" shirt. That's a classic T-shirt.
Oh man. Well,
what is your overall impression so far, Vin, of what you got to see? What time is it? I can't see what time it is.
10:43, about 15 minutes left. Probably another commercial break coming up.
I keep telling Vin, you gotta get the
We're
Peacock
up to WrestleMania
app,
17.
You gotta subscribe because this is like.
Listen, I'm going to Monday Night Raw. It doesn't get any
that's
more.
Good. That's fine, but this is like doing the Cliff Notes, version of watching it.
I know. Believe me, but you got to do that. Like I couldn't go in. This feeds the interest. So now I'm like, oh yeah, I could go back and just maybe do a streak of this time period and see all of these matches and all the promos
Starting
and
like
everything.
98 even, if you have to. Peacock, it's not that expensive. Mike's been doing it. Friend of the show, Mike Yao, has been delving deep into it, and you get the fuller picture. You see how week to week how things go, and how across an episode how they do it. Across 2 hours and weeks.
So I would say it's interesting, Joe. You brought this up before. It's not the same dynamic. It's not the Brett Sean thing. So they're showing their ascension
Yeah.
simultaneously, and
Yeah.
how it came
And they
came to
collide.
a head.
And they collide. Yeah,
And they
collide.
yeah. That's
So to
definitely
me,
what this one's like.
The Rock Austin feud is what Brett and Sean could have done. Like they could have done multiple WrestleManias together. They could have done multiple big time matches together had they
fans
been
would
able
hate
to
each
work
other.
together. You know, it's just they weren't able to get on the same page.
Yeah, that's the biggest loss, and that's what they both
Ultimately, like Bret Hart says it, and there's a great interview. It's a DVD that the WWE put out a couple of years ago. It's called Bret vs. Sean, and it's one of the videos that I sent you recently. It's Jim Ross sitting in a studio, and Bret and Sean are right next to each other for the first time, talking through their journey, talking through their careers. And basically, they both agreed, both Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels agreed that they worked themselves into a shoot.
Right.
So it started out as a work, where originally it was like a part of the story, and then they worked themselves so hard that it became a shoot, where it became a real-to-life animosity and hatred.
It's like method acting, you know?
Yeah,
I
can see that.
Gets out of hand.
Right.
I mean, you get
Stephen
Stephen
Bias puts a good point in the chat. He says the business was cutthroat, vicious. Hogan was the king shark. Austin would politic too, and that's true. Austin did.
Yeah.
You know, if you're the top guy, like everyone, there's always a bad story about every top guy. You know, except for maybe The Rock. But you know, Austin had his opinion on things. There were people he'd say, "No, I'm not going to face them." You know, and they kind of earn that to a point, and there's victims along the way, but that's how it is. It's cutthroat. Now it's not so much like that. It's things have like cooled off a little bit, but
everything's by design.
Well, it's not so much in the wrestlers' hands anymore as it is in the writers. They put the full faith in the writers these days.
With their contracts and how they're paid. Like the wrestlers today, because of Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, they're given guaranteed contracts, so they know whether they give 100% or if they fucking half-ass it, they're getting paid. Similar to like our workplace. Regardless of whether you put in whatever you put in, you're still getting paid. Back in the Attitude Era, you were given a contract with X amount of dates,
incentives,
right? And you had to meet these dates. And for every ass that you put in a seat and every merchandise you sold, that's where your revenue came in. So if you were able to kind of draw, if you were able to kind of make revenue, that's where your sell shirts, sell merchandise, sell tickets. It's all about selling tickets, selling pay-per-views. That's really what it was all about. So there was a drive. There was this commission-based competitive atmosphere, like a Shark Tank, like Steve says, where all these guys, they wanted to get in on the money. And now there's really not like they talk about it all the time. Who's going to be the guy to kind of grab the brass ring and who's going to kind of, branch out and kind of do that. A couple of guys, tried that, like CM Punk. He cut a promo back in 2014 that's called a pipe bomb, and he kind of set himself aside and separated himself from the rest of the locker room. And then CM Punk became like a headliner and a main event and things like that. But not a lot of these guys are willing to kind of take that plunge and kind of try to put themselves out there and kind of say, no, like that doesn't work for me. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be the ringmaster. I don't want to be Doink the Clown. I don't want to be fucking Duke the Dumpster Drosy. I want to be fucking Vin Vitale. I want to come out here, smoke weed, drink beer, kick your ass. What?
Fuck you. That brings a point to the Sasha Banks thing, I guess, where you'd say they didn't want to drop their belts or whatever, and they fucking basically just went home. Similar. I mean, Austin kind of pulled that move.
Similar. So the deal with Sasha and Naomi is they had worked so hard, they felt, at making them a great tag team. And they were the tag team champions, and they were looking to break them up and create animosity between them, and they just didn't want to do that. You'll probably see it. I don't know if they showed it yet in the documentary, but there's a point where Vince McMahon tells Stone Cold that he wants him to lose to Brock Lesnar unannounced, unproduced, unpromoted in a King of the Ring qualifier match on Raw. And Stone Cold says, You're gonna beat me in a King of the Ring qualifier under no notice, no promotion. You're just gonna go out there and job Stone Cold. Well, if that's the way things are gonna be, I'm gonna take my ball and go to fuck home. And he left. He left for 6 months because he didn't like the way the direction was going. And he was right to do that. I mean, he cost people a lot of money.
I don't think
He
he was.
left the locker room.
He wasn't right to it. He says that was the biggest mistake he ever made. He wishes he didn't do it, and that he handled
He
it
was
better.
right to leave that. He was right to leave that night, though.
Well, so you can make the
Yeah, I would
argument,
say
though, and this is what his whole thing is. People paid to see him, and he didn't show up. He could have.
There's not a lot of
better.
guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin. He would have kind of diminished his value if they would have brought him out in that light.
I
in
agree.
That type of atmosphere. It
No,
would have
I
really
mean,
diminished like all the years that he busted his ass, and he was very protective of his character, very protective of his spot, and he wasn't. He would have lost to Brock, no problem, but he wanted it to have build up, to have promotion, to draw money, to make money out of it. If you're not going to do that, he's not involved. He doesn't want anything to do with it. So Stone Cold is all about making the fucking dollar, dude.
And he was good at it. That would be an interesting statistic to see which wrestling superstar has sold the most merchandise and put the most
Well, I
asses.
can give you the top
pretty sure
three
it's
if
Stone
you want
Cold.
the top three. Well, I mean, it's on the internet. You can
Cold,
definitely see the results.
NWO.
No. So top three all-time ticket sales, pay-per-view sales, and overall like draw power. Number one, undisputed by a long shot, is Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
Number two, ironically or not, is John Cena. And number three is Hulk Hogan. That's your top three all-time draws.
Yeah. Well, I mean, John Cena had his reign for a long time too, and they shoved him down people's throats just like they do Roman Reigns today.
I hate John Cena. John Cena was almost the reason why I stopped watching wrestling in the mid 2010s, 2011s.
He's grown on me.
Fucking loathe John Cena.
I hated him at the time. I thought he ruined wrestling. Everyone hated him. They jammed him down our throats. But he's actually earned my respect because, I mean, the thing is, he showed up. He busted his ass. He did show up. He worked.
I respect John Cena's work ethic. I respect what he brought to the table.
What he does for children, dude.
What he does to kids. But as a wrestler, he sucks.
Yeah, he's a strong motherfucker, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think they interviewed the Big Show, and they asked him, like, who was the strongest wrestler he ever fought. And he said that
John Cena,
you get picked up by fucking John Cena, it's like being picked up by a wall.
Yeah,
You're not going nowhere.
He said, I've only been picked up by like 3 people, and Cena was one of them.
Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, and Cena.
Yeah, maybe Hogan.
Hogan, yeah.
Well, so, as we wind down, as this show is winding down too, what else do we got going on coming up over the next couple of weeks? I mean, I know we have House of the Dragons coming, next month?
San Diego had a lot
Game
of cool
Thrones
shit that they
4K.
dropped.
Yeah, so all that's going to be our topic of discussion for this Friday. So same bat time, same bat channel. We're going to be back to our normal Friday schedule
8 o'clock.
for a in-person, hopefully 8 o'clock, an in-person podcast where all 4 of us will actually be in the same room together for the first time in 2 months. So that'll be this Friday. We will be previewing and giving our overall impressions of SummerSlam.